Hi, I'm Lucas Speich, and today for my final presentation, I will be covering the traditional way of housing and hunting of coastal Yupik Alaskan natives. First and foremost, the Alaskan native Yupik people I will be covering today were the Yupik natives that were located on the west coast of Alaska, or the islands on the southwest area of Alaska near the Pacific Ocean, which are just called the Aleutian Islands. These areas, like much of the rest of Alaska, are generally, pretty cold, and also they just result in very tough areas to live in general. The highs in these areas are just above freezing at about 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Powerful winds are also very common in these areas as well. Frequent storms, rough seas, and even at times seismic activity, such as tsunamis, are all a part of what make this living environment a tough area to live in. The coastal environment is essentially like a marshland almost. So it's just all marshland, not a ton of trees, not any of that stuff. And many of their villages were located right along the Pacific Ocean of the coast. And in these situations, at least, a lot of the local homes were built on stilts in the case, of flooding or any big waves that, oftentimes came in. Another kind of home that the Yupik people commonly lived in were called a Barabara. Another term for this kind of house is like an earth lodge, or even, they called it like a hill house. This is because the house was just essentially built underground. These houses were built by digging, obviously underground chambers, and then they would also use built frames, which they would build out of either wood or bone to actually keep the houses up and keep them from collapsing as they were dug underground. They would also they would build these houses underground, or when they built these underground frames, they would cover them with woven grass and sod for insulation, to keep the interior of the houses warmer. The houses also always had a small hole on the ceiling just for fire smoke to escape. And being underground like they were, it kept them able to withstand, the strong winds that they oftentimes experienced. And the wind chill was also drastically, just declined being underground the way that they were. A big reason a lot of the Yupik houses were built on stilts near the coast was not only to stay away from, expected water damage, but it was also to be right above their main source of food. As these Yupik people who lived on the coast essentially, just lived off of the sea animals that the ocean would supply. Not only did this put them very close to their main food supply of fish and sea life, but it also supplied life and food from, just washed up sea creatures that were left on the shores, such as, shellfish and more during the big waves. Thus, it put them right at the forefront of their means of living. These houses that were built on stilts were, almost like tent-like structures made from sealskin mats over built frames. The sod insulation that they utilized for these houses as well is what kept these places warm during the cold, as the winters in Alaska can obviously bring terribly cold conditions. Being a community that heavily relied on water and sea life, a great deal of their clothing was made out of sea life resources as well, such as, the hide of sea life. The footwear they wore was also made out of marine animal hide, which proved to be very durable in, all their use cases that they came around and had. The Yupik people, located on or near the coast, survived off their plentiful abundance of sea life. They hunted for sea mammals such as seals, walruses, whales, and fish. They performed this hunting from both the shore and boats by harpooning, spearing, as well as just fishing. The hunting of walruses specifically was done with very heavy harpoons, and this is due to just the sheer size of these animals as well. Being that most of their food supply did come from the water, they also took part in drying their catch specifically for the winter months of the year, as hunting for sea life during the winter just obviously isn't as easy. Although ice fishing was also something that they did participate in, but just that isn't as abundant as it is in the summer times when the water is open. So once their sea life prey was captured, the Yupik people made sure to utilize like every ounce of the animal. As when the animals were butchered, at least the flippers, the heart, the bones, and also limbs and kidneys were always all saved. These resources from the animals were always used for tools such as hunting tools, weapons, as well as of course the Barabara home structures that they built. The hide of the sea animals were once again used for clothing, as well as many other appliances that they use, such as boat covers. They also utilized the hides to construct boat covers over the wooden structures that they would build on them. So these traditional ways of hunting and stuff like that dramatically changed during the Soviet times, as the hunters were reduced to the role of producing feed for Arctic foxes that were grown on fur farms. So, but this was like the original coastal Yupik people's natural way of surviving during the winter, and obviously during the summer as well, before the Soviets came in and obviously made a lot of changes. I have some of my references listed down here on this page. I used all of these pretty extensively throughout this presentation, as well as I also covered the presentation slides that we had on the Yupik people as well. So these are just the references that I have for this presentation that I made. Thank you.